Note, All the Pretty Horses is divided into 4 long chapters. For ease of organization, this Spark Note will divide both the first and last of these sections into 2 thematically coherent parts. The section of the Spark Note that deals with John Grady Cole before his departure for Mexico is labeled Chapter 1, Part 1. The section that deals with John Grady after his arrival in Mexico and until the end of Chapter 1, when John Grady is hired as a cowboy, is Chapter 1, Part 2. Similarly, Chapter 4, Part 1 deals with Chapter 4 from the chapter's beginning until John Grady's final split with Alejandra. Chapter 4, Part 2 concerns itself with the end of the novel, from the split with Alejandra onward. Note that the novel itself does not subdivide these 2 chapters in this manner. All the Pretty Horses opens with the funeral of John Grady Cole's grandfather, in the late autumn of 1949. John Grady is a 16-year-old who has lived his whole life on his grandfather's ranch outside of San Angelo, Texas. With his grandfather's death, John Grady's mother will sell the unprofitable ranch. The boy feels, inescapably, that he is witnessing the final act of a drama that has been ongoing since his great-grandfather built a one-room hovel on the site in 1866. This first section of the novel, leading up to John Grady's departure for Mexico, consists of a group of connected scenes, conversations with friends and parents that lead to John Grady's conclusion that there is nothing left for him in San Angelo. John Grady's parents are estranged. His mother, who at 36 is still young and longs for a life of excitement and romance away from the isolation of the ranch, is trying to build an acting career. She no longer speaks to his father, a professional gambler who was deeply scarred psychologically by his experiences as a prisoner of war during World War II. Although it is not made explicit, it also seems that John Grady's father is dying of lung cancer. After his grandfather's funeral, John Grady meets with his father at a cafe in San Angelo. The two are silent and awkward, not knowing what to say to each other. The father feels that he has failed his son. John Grady sits at dinner with his mother, and asks her in what seems to be an oft-repeated conversation to let him run the ranch. She denies the request, repeating her intention to sell it. In response, John Grady goes to visit Franklin, the family's lawyer, who tells him that there is nothing he can do to prevent the sale. He learns from Franklin, too, that his parents have become officially divorced. After some passage of time, we see John Grady taking a trip from San Angelo to San Antonio to see the play in which his mother is acting. He is out of place in the relatively cosmopolitan city, and his trip only confirms that he and his mother are separated by a vast distance. John Grady sees his father for the last time in the spring of 1950. They go riding together in the countryside around San Angelo. It is another episode in the string of John Grady's difficult and choked goodbyes. We see him outside in the dark with his friend Rollins, and learn that they are planning to run away from Texas. We see him in downtown San Angelo, talking with Mary Catherine Barnett, a girl whom he used to date but who broke up with him. Finally, we see him standing one night outside Rollins' house. The two friends slip quietly away, and ride out onto the prairie, away from home and toward their adventure. All the Pretty Horses both begins and ends with a funeral. First, the funeral of John Grady Cole's grandfather, and at the end of the novel the funeral of the woman we know only as abuela, grandmother in Spanish, the old Mexican woman Louisa's mother who lived on the ranch since the turn of the century, and who helped raise John Grady. This is appropriate, since All the Pretty Horses is a novel about endings, about the closing of America's great historical and mythic chapter of cowboys on horseback. The Grady Ranch was established by John Grady Cole's great-grandfather in 1866, and tended by his grandfather until 1949. Its lifespan, then, parallels the lifespan of the American cowboy. The death of the grandfather expresses a larger phenomenon, a way of life passed away, too. The ranch is no longer profitable, and will be sold by John Grady's mother, a woman who aspires to a cosmopolitan life away from the solitude and hardships of the ranch. John Grady realizes this when he rides out the night of the funeral and stands in the sunset. In McCarthy's words, he stood like a man come to the end of something.